So we've had our outdoor wood burner for about 4 years now. And the question I want to answer in today's video, is it worth it? We use this thing to heat our entire house, our Airbnb rental unit. It also heats all of our water, and it runs a heater in our garage workshop. So this thing does do a lot of work, but it also goes through a ton of wood. Quick plug for our last video, we built this solar powered trailer for our homestead, and we can actually power our entire outdoor wood burner, which does have 2 electric pumps in it, just using this solar trailer should there ever be a grid down situation. So we're going to break out the Argo and we're going to gather some firewood, and we're going to talk about the pros and cons of an outdoor wood burner after running ours for over 4 years now. Alright, first let's talk about the cons of an outdoor wood burner. The biggest con, in my opinion, is the expense. A base unit like this is a Central Boiler Classic. These can start at as much as $6,000, plus the cost to install all of it. That's one of the big cons. The other big con is the amount of wood you're going to go through. So you can see here, and over there, it's a ton of wood. For the entire heating season, we're going to go through about 10 cords of wood. Another important consideration if you're getting an outdoor wood burner is all of the equipment you're going to need to process all of that firewood. We purchased a high-end chainsaw, we have an Argo, we have a trailer, we have a log splitter, and then there's the places to store the wood. We've got 2 wood sheds now that we've built. So there's a lot of extra things beyond the wood burner that you need to consider. If you're rookies like we were 4 years ago when we started, we'd barely cut down 1 or 2 trees before moving to our homestead. There's a lot to learn when it comes to cutting down trees, and you really want to find a mentor or someone to show you how to do it safely and how to do it properly. There's lots of little tricks we've learned over the years. In the first year, I can't tell you how many times we got our bar stuck in a tree because we were cutting it the wrong way, or just stupid things like cutting wood that was on the ground and was kind of rotten. In this video I'm doing now, I'm cutting this today, 4 years later. This pine tree here we cut down 2 years ago, and it's sitting nicely off the ground. There's about 4 or 5 inches between it and the ground, so it's super dry and it's been able to dry out. If it was flat on the ground, it would be pretty much rotten and worthless 2 years later. Lucky for us, we live on 20 acres and we live in a big forest, mostly pine trees, but we do have maple and oak trees, which is what we have here, a mix of everything. So we've got plenty of wood on our property that we can cut for it. The other con, it's a ton of work. So you got to cut the wood, you got to stack the wood, and then you got to keep feeding the thing. Our unit is pretty nice. It's got a big, huge firebox in it, and we only have to load it up about 2 times a day. The thermostat on the side where we can set the temperature, we keep it at about 180 degrees. That's the water temperature. And if it starts cooling down, there's a sensor in here, and it opens this damper and it lets air in, and that heats the fire back up. This thing constantly goes throughout the day, on and off, open and closed, to regulate the air and to maximize the fire so the fire lasts as long as possible. So the cost is one of the big cons. The amount of wood you're going to go through is another one of the big cons, and then just the amount of work. It requires a lot of man hours to cut, split all of the wood. One of the things though is you don't necessarily have to split all of the wood. So going on year 4, that was one thing that we learned. Initially we split everything. Obviously the wood dries a lot quicker if you split it. But what we did this year and last season was we probably split about half of it and then left the other half just as full rounds. This thing gets so hot that you can usually start it out with some split wood in there, get a nice hot fire going, get some hot coals going, and then you can just put huge round logs in there and it'll burn through anything. Even if it's wet or pine, obviously it's not going to be as efficient or burn as hot, but it will work and it will burn through it. So we've kind of found, after doing this for 4 years now, a good mix. So we save some of the work by not splitting all of the wood. Another con of burning wood for heat is the time it takes to season or dry the wood out. We need 10 cords of wood for one burning season. but technically we should have another 10 cords of wood on standby drying out from the year prior. That's 20 full cords of wood. It's 4 years now into it, and we still haven't managed to get 20 cords of wood stockpiled. All right, let's talk about the pros of having an outdoor wood burner. One of the big pros is we can keep our house nice and warm. If I were using propane, I'd constantly be checking the thermostat, worrying about refilling it. With the wood, it doesn't make too much of a difference. We keep the heat cranked pretty hot. So that's one of the pros, is not constantly worrying about the cost of propane or filling the tanks up. I mean, while it is true if we keep it much warmer in the house, we will go through more wood because it has to keep the water that much hotter. It's not as significant as with propane. The other big pro with the outdoor wood burner is it heats our water. With 5 females in our house, we go through a lot of hot water, as you can imagine. So we have an electric water heater, and when we're using the wood burner during burning season, the electricity to that water heater is turned off and it's fully wood fire powered. So it's basically like unlimited hot water from that perspective. So the other pro is, you know, it really depends on your situation. In my situation, I have a big sort of ranch style house. It almost looks like a 2-story house. It's not. That part up there is our rental unit that we rent out on Airbnb. This part down here and all of this is the house that we live in. So it's basically like a big flat ranch. And it would be very difficult to heat all of this with just one wood stove. We do have a wood stove kind of in the central part of our house, but it doesn't get back to the back bedrooms and heat those very well. So it all depends on your situation. If I just had a regular 2-story house, I would probably opt to not have an outdoor wood burner and instead have a big indoor wood burner centrally located in the house. We have a wood burner inside. We love burning wood inside the house. We like the ambiance, we like the heat that it gives off. But all depends on your situation. In our situation, it just wouldn't work to heat this entire house. We'd need a wood stove here and another wood stove back there, and that would be really tricky to manage. All right, so the other pro of having a wood stove is, while it is true it is a lot of work and a lot of exercise, I'd love to say that if I wasn't doing all of that work and all of that exercise all winter long, I'd be doing something more productive like volunteering or reading books or finding a cure for cancer. But the truth is, I'd probably just be sitting around watching TV. So it's a lot of good exercise. Our family gets out and does it together. So although that's kind of an unusual one, I know if you broke it down and you said, well, what are you getting paid per hour to heat this? It'd probably be like $2 an hour or something ridiculous. Totally not worth my time. On the flip side, if I wasn't doing this, it's not like I'd be doing something to earn that money during that time. Middle of winter here, there's not a lot to be doing outside, unlike summertime. So that's one of the other pros, is it's a lot of good exercise. It's a lot of keeping you busy in the winter time. It's also rewarding to be able to go out and say, look, I cut down this tree and now I'm heating my house with it. And knowing that I'm heating the house with the effort in the tree that's renewable. We got tons of new trees growing up in here. I just feel better at doing that versus using propane. And then talking about propane, the other benefit that I like with the wood stove is I'm not relying on a third party. So in other words, if for some reason the propane truck stopped bringing propane to my house, we have no way to heat the house. With the wood stove, I could indefinitely heat this house. If the propane prices go through the roof, if there's some natural disaster, if there's some crap hit the fan scenario and they can't bring propane to my house anymore, I could heat my house indefinitely with my wood stove. Whereas with the propane, I'm relying on an outside party to keep my house warm, keep my family warm. So that's another pro of the wood stove. You're sort of off grid and you're relying on yourself, and I like that aspect of it. Another pro with the outdoor wood burner is how you can expand it. You turn the fan on in the furnace, heats the house up. We currently have 2 pumps, one heating our house furnace and our water heater, and the other pump heating our upstairs rental unit and our garage workshop. So it's heating 4 different units, and there's actually room for another pump if we wanted to heat something else, like say a hot tub or a pool, for example. So in conclusion, after 4 years of having an outdoor wood burner, is it worth it? In my particular situation, I would say yes, it is worth it. If I could go back in time and change it, I put a lot of time and money into it, would I have not gotten the wood stove? The answer is no. I definitely would still have gotten it. In my particular situation, with my setup and sort of a ranch style house, having the 2 units, having 5 girls who like to keep the heat nice and warm, for all those reasons, it's definitely been worth it for me.